Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Mongolia, a member of the international court that issued an arrest warrant for him. Official visit in which he is to meet with the Mongolian leader Ukana Khorelsukh is Putin's first to the member country of the International Criminal Court since it issued a warrant for his arrest nearly 18 months ago on charges of war crimes in Ukraine. Ukraine has called on Mongolia to arrest Putin and hand him over to the court in The Hague. A spokesperson for Putin said last week that Kremlin is not worried about the visit. For more on this, let's turn to Arise European Affairs analyst Dr. Marek Laskiewicz. Good day, sir. Thank you for joining us. Now, thank you. So there seems to be a possibility that Pokrovsk may likely fall. Can you tell us about what you know of this development and what this means for Ukraine?
Would be a very serious defeat for Ukraine. It would not be a fatal result, but it will be serious because not only is Pokrovsk a hub for communications, it shows how Russia is advancing, and the real problem is that after Pokrovsk, it can go further. The Ukrainians have split their forces, so some are in the Kursk incursion and some are down south, and those down south are not coping, and therefore the real problem is how far can Russia go after this? Because as things stand, Ukraine will suffer certainly some loss of territory at the very least.
All right, so meanwhile, multiple Ukrainian cities have been targeted in Russian attacks between Sunday and Monday. The Ukrainian school year starts again nationwide, and we're seeing all these strikes. Is there a possibility that Zelensky's peace plan will not work out eventually?
There is virtually no possibility of Zelensky's peace plan working for three reasons. Firstly, after the Kursk incursion, the peace talks that were going on unofficially were broken off by the Russians. So far from the incursion helping, it hindered. Secondly, the peace plan is once again unrealistic, just as his previous attempts were. He has not actually ever presented a realistic peace plan, more like a set of demands, which is in its way no different to what Russia wishes to have as its so-called peace plan. Thirdly, the Russians right now are winning. They are going to perhaps take Pokrovsk, that is the most likely scenario at present. And therefore, because they are winning, there is absolutely no need for a peace plan, certainly not along the lines that Ukraine wants. So for this reason, his peace plan is again, I'm afraid, not going to work.
All right, so can you talk to us about the visit of President Putin to Mongolia and calls for his arrest by Zelensky, that's Ukrainian president?
Yes, the central problem is that there is a court of law, but unfortunately there's no way of enforcing its judgments. It relies upon member states on enforcement. If the member state decides for its own, if you like, political reasons not to enforce the judgment, then the judgment simply rests in thin air. Mongolia lies right next to Russia and, may I point also, with China on the other side. The result of this is that Mongolia is certainly not a free agent. And in any case, it works closely in its way with China and Russia in the sense that it is a landlocked state and there's little opportunity to do otherwise. Therefore, as the Kremlin has pointed out, they do not expect Mongolia to do anything. However, it has the very unfortunate side effect of showing up the impotence of the ICC, which is, of course, unfortunate.
Okay, so let's talk about Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is saying he's adamant that the capturing of nearly 600 Russian soldiers will not deter his forces' advance into eastern Ukraine. How do you see this war panning out in the long run?
There are 2 points to make here. The very first is, for Putin and Russia, the loss of 600 prisoners of war is nothing. If you read about the account of when the Germans attacked in World War II, the Russians lost millions, literally, of prisoners of war, and they still won. It's exactly the same as the amount of territory they hold, which is minuscule, the Ukrainians, that is, compared to the rest of Russia. So when Putin says it will not, in any case, deter the Russians, he is correct. The entire plan of the incursion as a buffer zone has been shown up by the attacks on Ukrainian cities, which you mentioned before. And the entire point of the incursion as a way of forcing the Russians to the peace table has failed in this respect. And so therefore, yes, it means precisely what he says. The second point is that the Russians at present are winning in the south, which is the key area. If they carry on like this, then they can capture substantial amounts of territory and, of course, many Ukrainian prisoners of war as well. The net effect of this will be that the incursion in that sense is irrelevant. And what we must now look to see is exactly where Russia goes next. Will it carry on advancing westwards? Will it turn south to nip off a salient? What will it do? It has enough forces to certainly take the initiative and force on.
All right, before I let you go, I understand you've written a book titled Stopping World War III. Now, talk to us about other recommendations you may have made as contained in your book that, if adopted, could lead to a possible end of the Ukrainian war.
Yes, the central point is this war, if we do not watch out, will escalate. It might escalate eventually to World War III. So it would be very good if we could somehow halt the war. But how do you halt a war like this? The answer is, I'm afraid, of some sort of compromise which neither side likes, but is prepared to accept. And this is the point that is missing in these talks, in the peace plans, both preferred by the Russians and preferred by the Ukrainians, specifically, for example, the plan you mentioned a short while ago by President Zelensky. What is needed instead is a realistic appraisal of where some sort of acknowledged peace could run. And unfortunately, this is not even being discussed, at least not overtly, anywhere in the West. Rather the opposite. When I mentioned this in Poland, they simply did not want to hear. So it's only, for example, on the rise right now, one can even discuss a plan like this. Instead, what is happening is the war is carrying on. And if it goes wrong, as it's going wrong now for the West, the next result could be very bad for us all in the world, not just for Ukraine.
That's quite interesting. But many thanks, Dr. Laskiewicz, for your insight. Really appreciate it.